Well, with your long commute, you're probably be in the car a lot.
All right, are we good to go, Danielle?
Yes, I think we're good to
All
go.
right, well,
And no,
We're streaming YouTube.
6:11. And brain just quit. Roll call. That's what I'm trying to think of. Let's do roll call and see everybody who's here.
Shannon Knight. Vice Chair.
Very well about the reason for the planning commission.
Bojano, chair.
Ted Wyatt, member.
Vicki Olson, member.
Mary Baumgartner, council liaison.
Danielle Choi, staff liaison.
Chris Myers, city staff.
Welcome, everybody. We will, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. The reordered agenda. Danielle, so graciously there, so accommodate the Myers. Motion to approve. In a second. Okay. Those who approve,
Aye.
any, do not approve, my brain is not working today. All right. So the approval of the minutes. I have made one correction, fixing Mr. White's name in the call to order where I added it. Any other?
No, move to approve
With the
the
correction,
changes.
Second.
those for the motion. Those against it. All right. That brings us to public comment. Seeing none, we shall
We have
move on.
comments.
Nobody online? Seeing none, we shall move on to Vision 43 with Mr. Myers.
Excellent. Thank you, Chair Ganell. Appreciate the time this evening, you guys. It's been a bit since I've been here to CCI, so I'm here to talk about Vision 43. I know a few of you in the room know quite a bit about it, but because maybe not everyone does, I'll just give a quick little 3 or 4 minute brief of what this project is. So it's called Vision 43. We started back in October of 2023. And what we're doing is we're looking at the Highway 43 corridor from the Lake Oswego Westland border to the I-205 overpass. It's just short of a 3.5 mile stretch of highway through Westland. And we are looking at reinvigorating, or let me look back. We are working on changing some of the allowed uses adjacent to the corridor. So what types of businesses and housing would we like to see throughout the corridor rather than our single story strip mall type uses that we have. We want to make places that are better for our community to attract in, to go to shop, places that will be more successful for local businesses. And so as part of that, we created 3 focus areas. And so the zoning changes that we're working on will be in 3 specific areas throughout that corridor. Think Robinwood, Walmart area, the old Bolton Firehouse kind of area right there, that corner of Russell Williams. This is real estate business there. And then think market of choice in that area. Those are kind of our 3 focus areas where we're working on some new draft mixed use code, so we can have different heights and bulk on properties that we haven't allowed in the past. And we spent about 14 months out in the community doing events and surveys, farmers markets, and presentations to garner feedback from the community. We had some very high scoring concepts, and that was basically to allow a little bit more height and to allow for use of the property. And that's really what's held us back from our commercial areas being more than what they are right now. So we are in the phase right now where our consulting firm that's on board is drafting a new mixed use code. And we're in the process at this point where I've actually been to Gary and the Planning Commission twice with some policy questions. But as you get into writing new code, there are always certain questions that you need to have answered by your leadership, right? And so we've taken the Planning Commission 6 policy questions. We've only taken council 3 so far. They've asked for some more information. So we're in this sort of process of churning through now that we've all discussed and talked about the theory of what we want, now we're at the point where the work we're doing is actually would make something like that happen. So we have to be very careful about how the code is written and what type of standards do we expect and want. If you over constrain a site, no one will ever come and build anything. If you don't have some parameters, you may not get what you want. We're hearing very loudly that, unfortunately, the former McDonald's site on 43 is going to might be a new car wash. The community's been very frustrated by that. Well, that's not our choice. It's a free market society. As you know, this is a capitalist society, and within the code, they are allowed to ask for additional use permits to do that. So there will be, it will end up going to planning commission when we get through that process. My point is, sorry to be sidetracked, but the point is we'll never get better than what we're getting if we don't do something. That's what we're here to do. On top of that, we have a housing production strategy goal in the state of Oregon, where we're going to need to produce about 3,000 housing units over the next 20 years. We typically build about 40 housing units a year. Some years it's as low as 16. So we're clearly not at the pace the state wants us to be at. So if we are going to have more housing and more density in housing, we feel pretty comfortable that the corridor is a great place to start here in West. So that sort of concept was pretty wildly, it was pretty strongly confirmed by the community comments we received. We're always up in that 75 to 85% acceptance rate of those concepts. So it's generally been, that's the approach the community wants us to take. So where we're at now, so that's the project itself. So I mentioned where we're at now is MIG, our consulting firm, is drafting code and sending us back bits and pieces. We're taking questions we have to the Planning Commission first, to our community working group, which is a group of 13 volunteers in the community, then to the Planning Commission, and then on to Council. Council is the ultimate approver of the project. Council gets to say yes, no, change this, don't do this. Amazing work, Chris. Thank you so much. Whatever comes to their mind. No, actually, it's been great. Council and Planning Commission are working group and fantastic at giving us great feedback. In the process now, the draft code is coming together. We are planning to. I don't even go off the web right now. Let's talk. The draft code is going to get a look in September by our working group, and then we're going to take it out in early November to open houses for people to start giving us get a look at what the draft code would look like. To most, it'll be pretty boring. It's a lot of words on paper and maybe some graphics to help illustrate, but we want to make sure that everyone has a chance to weigh in. So we are discussing Thursday with our consulting firm our timelines. The original goal is to have this done October of this year, then to maybe December. We might need to bench back a few more weeks. We'll talk about that at council the next time I'm there. But really, the goal and the concept I'm working on. This is a document that we hope will guide development on Highway 43 over the next 30 to 40 years in these areas. I think if we need to take an extra 3 or 4 months to do it right, that's better than doing it fast. We need to make sure that what we draft, what it will get out of that is what the community actually told us. So we're trying to just like, let's pump the brakes. We need to make sure council has all the information they need on these policy questions to really make sure they guided us in the drafting of the code, of the mixed use code. There's one other part of the project that is wrapping up, and that is the connections through the neighborhoods. And so we're trying to find and formalize connections that are adjacent to the corridor, but not on the highway. So there are a lot of non-formalized trails and pathways that kind of lead you along the corridor, but not really on it. Councilor Bright is our walking, Highway 43 walking champion. So she has helped our consulting firm highlight where these are. We want to go back at some point and get signage. It's not about paving everything. It's just about giving people the idea that, hey, you can actually walk from the library to Robinwood Station and never have to get to the highway. And it's a lot more pleasant that way too. Safer. So that's another part of that project, is just kind of formalizing those connections. We think that would be a nice benefit to the community. So go ahead.
Are those on public spaces or are those on private spaces?
All public spaces. Yep, all public spaces. And then there, of course, in that process, there will be areas where we might say, hey, maybe a striping treatment would be appropriate here on Elm Rand down by Cedar Oak. Not that you can't drive there, but it just shows, hey, I'm okay to walk here. Some neighborhoods have been very much against sidewalks, and we would like those anyway. So striping treatment's actually very cost effective, along with some signage. So we just want to formalize it to let people know, I think, you know, Robinwood Station, half mile this way, Walmart or whatever. You know. So we're doing that for both sides, trying to give people those options of walking a little bit more down in that corridor. And then hopefully that alleviates the need to go from, you know, drive from one parking lot to the next for the 3 miles. So the policy, the types of questions we're asking right now, things like, should we require a housing component as part of new development focus areas? Or I'm not going to be, I'm just giving you, informing you of what we're asking right now. Should new development in these 3 focus areas be required to be a minimum of 2 stories? Another one is, should we require what we call step back? So if your business is adjacent to a residential property, should you have to lower the height on the space of your property that's up against that residential? So it's not so dominating the residential property. So we're asking those types of questions. And now we're getting into this mode where we're really looking at some incentive packages that might be worthy to help incentivize developers to build more of what we're looking for as a community. Sometimes they need a financial nudge, and it's not we pay them, it's more like you get a discount on some system development charges if you were to do X, Y, or Z. So we're starting to have those conversations as well. So it's a rather complex process we're going through. It's why it takes so long. You know, but again, council was kind enough to fund this project and give us a little bit more money for this next budget cycle, because they recognize that, you know, we can build a plan, but if it just sits in a binder on a shelf, well, then what do we do? What are we doing, right? So we need to then keep moving that project forward. Next steps right now, the big one that I have on my list is I have 10 local and regional developers that do these types of mixed-use developments. And I am setting up interviews and kind of giving them a glimpse at what we're discussing. As I mentioned, we're very concerned about over-constraining sites. So we want to talk to them about, we're thinking of making everything at least 2 stories. And if their response is like, oh my God, you know, you're the devil. It's like, okay, that might be one we don't want to do. So we're trying to gather information now from the folks who would actually come and invest in Westland and develop it. And if something jumps off the screen to them as problematic, then we're going to have more conversations about that. Again, this is why it's going to take a little longer. It's about getting it right and making sure we get something. We have a technical advisory group, local jurisdictions, TriMet, ODOT, et cetera. We have our 4th meeting coming up in September. We'll have our 7th community working group meeting coming up soon. Then we'll do some internal review. We'll get out to the policy questions to city council. And then we have our public workshops coming up, what we think will be early November. So we're just stepping through the process of trying to improve the 43 corridor in those 3 sections and make some spaces that the community will want and like and need. And hopefully that will help our economic position as well. A little challenge. So that was a lot of talking on my part. I apologize.
Yeah, I have a question.
Please ask. I'm happy to answer as best I can.
Since you always ask me questions, but I'm not taking things on the.
Only when you're in the working group.
You say you have about 75 to 80%, positive
Yeah.
reaction. What are the major holdbacks for the 20%?
The traffic is usually one of the first we don't have. Yeah, it's like, this is horrible, traffic's terrible. And look, I've been very forthright. Traffic can be rough on 43, and this won't fix anything. There may be some things that help. Certainly TriMet, if you densify a little bit, will run more buses, but also shorten up headways, meaning time between buses. Instead of a 30-minute wait, they go to 15 or 12 minutes. So that might help take some cars off the road, like them or not. Buses do take cars off the road. That's just how it works. So it's usually traffic is a big one. We have a few folks who have expressed things like bike lanes are a waste of space for cars, so get rid of those and have more cars. Okay, I appreciate your opinion. Another one is speed. And we've been actively having an internal conversation about discussions with ODOT about potentially lowering the speed limit from 35 to 25 within at least those focus areas, much like Lake Oswego. Lake Oswego is a 25 zone, most of the stretch, I should say. So speed. Oh, and another one actually that our consultant did help us come up with some solutions for. A big one is crosswalks. We have very few crosswalks on 43. In fact, I have a lot of great pictures of people getting off a bus and crossing, not at a crosswalk and not onto a sidewalk. So we recognize there's some fault there. So although this isn't an infrastructure project, meaning potholes, pavement striking and such, we did sort of grab onto the crosswalk thing because it was so important to the community. So our consulting firm on their map, on their activity, have added 12 new crosswalks. Doesn't mean we get them right away, but we can at least prioritize them as being something that the community wants. And they've obviously connected to places where people walk. A crosswalk in the middle of span of 43 where there's nothing there does us no good, but by a bus stop makes like a lot of sense, especially because usually the bus stops are one this way, they're across from each other. So let's formalize that. So that was one I'm really happy about, because that crosswalks initially was one of the most discussed pieces of Highway 43, speed and crosswalks. Speed we can request ODOT to change, but we can't command it. So crosswalks we can't do. So hopefully that answered that.
So one thing to keep in mind on this too is that this only applies to the area outside the highway right of way. It has nothing to do with the road.
That's right.
So
That's right.
the road is a different issue.
The road's a beast, and that's a whole nother topic of discussion.
Oh, God, again.
Nikki's favorite people.
Yeah, right.
Are there any other questions?
The meetings, I know you do a good job of putting in all the comments and stuff and notes and stuff from the working group, but these other meetings that you have with developers, you put any kind of notes from those that are in public?
I can. I haven't had one. They're on my list to start making those calls and setting up those appointments. Yeah. I've been trying to figure out if I could get 10 of them to come to one meeting, because it would really help me from an efficiency perspective. But essentially, I've been told that no, most competitive developers are not going to sit in the same room and tell you all the things they want and don't want, that they're going to want to have them in private. I will probably be able to put some notes up, but probably not attach company names to them. But I think that would be okay. I might be able to put like local, regional, that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm happy to do so. I mean, as you know, I've tried very hard, and Lynn, we've tried very hard to there's nothing, and we're just trying to get out and get what the community wants.
It's done a really good job.
Happy to give those notes out and, people can make fun of the questions I ask, whatever, like, why did you ask me? But yeah, happy to do so, but that's on my list, like, I need to get, like, I feel the weight of that next step on my shoulders right now, so. That's nice.
Could you tip us off if it was Trader Joe's though, just so
Wow, it's like I'm at home right now. Gee, my wife never asked about that. We are, so I will say to that, we are actively having that discussion about what do we allow for single-use, single-story structures? Like, would we give exemptions to grocery stores, which I think would be smart, right? But also, are we gonna limit the size of some of these, right? Like a typical TJ's is about 20,000 square feet. Harper's Hardware is 50,000 square feet. Safeway's about 50,000 square feet. So, but you know, a Home Depot is like 135,000 square feet. We don't, the corridor really doesn't lend itself to a Home Depot type development. We're not deep enough, but we are having those discussions about like what type of exemptions for single story would we allow. You know, obviously grocery stores I would assume would be one of those. We need food. I mean, but that's going to be something that council is going to get to ultimately decide is how big, is there going to be a limit? Is it, if it's over 30,000 square feet, is that, you need a special, you know, these are not easy questions to answer. But yeah, so we're in the process right now, in the process.
Oh, no, again.
And then I was thinking as,
Do we have to pause?
No, it seems to still be on.
We're still recording? Okay.
Yeah,
one
yeah,
of
we're
the
still recording.
things I was thinking is that in the next 4 to 6 months, I could come back, since this is the committee for community engagement or involvement, and I have a long list of all the engagement that we did, and I give you sort of a breakdown. It would also help me because that will be a big part of my presentation to council at the end is the engagement, recording the engagement, what we've done. So I'd be happy to come back and kind of show that to you guys too. You can take a look at what we did, and then what we're going to do as we finish it up. So,
Well, with that being said, it takes me to what I was going to say next, which is part of our mission is to assist you with
Yep.
your message,
Yep.
or not you per se, but the Vision 43 people. So how can we help you?
I think that honestly would be the next thing is for me to come back with, here's what we've done engagement wise, and here's what we're thinking of doing next, sort of as we wrap it up, and get some feedback on that. Like, is that enough places? Is that enough? You know, have I connected enough with the community? Or as we take out sort of final documents, is a couple of open houses enough, or should I do, you know, I would love to kind of hear that kind of feedback. Lynn and I get so lost in the forest that, you know, you just lose perspective sometimes. So it'd be great to get some feedback on that. So that I would love to come back, I mean, even as early as 3 months from now, if whatever the agendas would fit.
October, November?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that would be some great feedback to get.
We're done.
Cool. Thank you, guys. Progress. Amen. We're working on it. Mary Ellen, that's our background.
And again, if there's anything we can do in the meantime to help you, don't bother to reach out to Danielle.
Yeah.
Reach out to us.
Yeah, thank you. Once we get the open house date set, that'll be a big one. We'll try and make sure we get the word out. I want people to, as boring as it may seem, that is where the rubber hits the road. So it's really important that we need people to come out and give us that. And council will certainly want to hear what people have said. That'll be a big part of that, some of that final presentation to council too. So, yeah, thank you. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you. Thanks for having us. Absolutely. Oh wait, Bo runs it.
I do.
To you, like Danielle, take it away.
That brings us to number 7, working group discussion. And I think this was something the chairman wanted us to discuss in regards to, I think this may have to deal with maybe the waterfront project and concerns about public involvement and public say and public vote. on certain things. So you want to,
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the time when I listen to working group things, people seem to be mostly on the same page, and so they haven't taken, or I don't know, who would take official votes for this.
For working groups, we tend to do sort of a general thumbs up consensus, you know.
So, which has always been fine, but you've had some issues with this waterfront one where they were kind of all over the place and not really a consensus really. I mean, they were wanted to move things along, but they had a lot of issues. And since it was just like this consensus thing and they didn't vote on anything, I don't think that unless, I mean, luckily the chair of the working group did a good job in saying, we want that this is not a true, like not everybody's on board in the minutes that goes to the planning commission and to council, but if they didn't, how was anybody supposed to know that there was not complete agreement on there?
was it an issue of multiple factions that could not get together and get a majority, or was it that there just wasn't?
There was clear dissensions where people did not want to vote, or like the tribes specifically didn't have the right personnel there to vote. So it was like, should they have another meeting where they have the tribes actual vote? Or should they just go without the tribes, the tribes input, basically? And there was some concerns about that. And then there was clearly a member who didn't like a lot of stuff on it and didn't want to agree to anything. So it's like, we haven't had that very much.
Nope.
Yeah.
That I listened to. So that's why I can't like, should there be a process? Should we recommend that the working groups have a process of voting? Because I think if a vote, council can clearly see, 5 people said yes, 3 people said no, and ask question of why did they say no?
You can vote in a working group, though. It's not a meeting. I mean, it is a meeting, but they're not, that's not the,
Well,
that's not the assignment of that.
Well, that's what we're talking about is, should that be changed?
Oh, I see.
Because I think a vote does give you like a clear idea of what actually happened in the meeting rather than this like consensus idea. So that was my whole thought.
Or even like an informal thumbs up or thumbs
Or,
down.
yeah, the thumbs up or
Not
thumbs down.
necessarily conveyed through,
Right.
in that it's the majority was where.
It gives the feeling, perception that, like, if that chair did not specifically ask to have that in the minutes that these people do disagree, then it would have just been past the council or past the planning commission that the working group agreed with it. And so I didn't think it gave a clear perception of what actually was going on. And that's
Any ideas how we want to address that or solve them?
well, that's why I was like, should it be a vote? Or should it be conveyed in the minutes, as part of the working group process, that there has to be clear delineations of what the major concerns are before it goes to the next one. I mean, what would be helpful to you? The next
That
body it goes to.
That would be really helpful for the planning commission, I think council too, to have some indication on distinct issues. So we don't need a consensus, thumbs up, thumbs down, just to have an idea of how things are going. When Chris comes to us and gives presentations on Highway 43, we have questions that are posed to us, and we ask him questions, and sometimes he has to come back with information.
Yeah, that's right.
But if there, on some issues, we do a consensus, and we get thumbs up, then we can move forward on that. point, but it's the other issues that require clarification.
So what I'm hearing is Chris Myers should run every working.
That is a tall order.
And the third
Can we talk about my salary? Well, I think that I don't want to jump in necessarily, but I do think that, to Gary's point, I think the way I've looked at it is, I go to the working group, the technical advisory group doesn't really do much, they just listen and give us advice. The community working group, we've had it in 43 where it's pretty much everyone's on the same page. But I try to note when someone has a point that maybe they still agree with the concept, but maybe had one issue. Like, ooh, I don't like that perfect thing. It's like, oh, I noted that Mary Carlson didn't like the parking requirement, but it's CFA, it's not ours, it's the state required, I can't do anything about it. But I know that that was there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I also want to go to PC and I can say, well, we had a consensus at the working group. But when I go to council, I want to be able to say, planning commission unanimously agreed with X. So that's why most of the time we're kind of doing a thumbs up. We're all good. Does that make sense? So I don't know if I'm helping or messing that up a little bit more, but it's kind of, for me, it's like the closer I get to the approval authority, the more I want to say definitively that this was absolutely agreed upon by that.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Shannon, but what's missing is it's happening in the meeting, but it's not necessarily getting reported. And
That's my
so
concern.
there's something happening, and I mean, the only way to do that is to have a more comprehensive recording of the minutes. Or, because that would give you, without having to read the whole thing, I don't know, would reading the whole thing help you? I don't know.
But see, like, I don't know if it gets, that's what I'm saying, is I don't know that it's getting recorded in the minutes. It wouldn't have gotten, the way I was listening to it, it would not have gotten into the minutes unless the chair specifically asked it to be in the minutes.
Unless there was a more comprehensive recorded dictation of the actual meeting.
Right,
But
but
there's
there's someone
a video.
gonna listen to the whole, read through that whole thing, like how many. Well, I know,
But
besides.
that's,
But I'm saying,
because I can create the minutes,
planning
but,
commission and council don't have time to
But-
listen
but-
verbatim to.
But with that being said, when
I
I create the minutes, I'm summarizing as well. And so what all of this discussion is not getting in there either, so how do we solve that without that? And, or both, in that you can look at this or you can look at that.
So I think it helps having either audio or video recordings of the meetings. And if there's an issue, it can be a reference to a time slot on the video or audio. I think that helps. I've used that before. So that comes in handy for council meetings. I think one of the points that came up, and now we listened to the first few minutes, and I think I understood that there were summaries of public comments related to the waterfront, but there were public comments that were submitted in writing that were supposed to be forwarded to the working group, and they were not forwarded. And that was one brought up by the chair.
That sounds like a problem.
Yeah, and that's a separate issue. There was two issues I had.
Yeah, that was the
other issue I had.
But it sort of goes along the point of consensus and reporting. How do you report that? But then provide. So it's an information issue on that side, but an information issue having all of the testimony.
I mean, since we're on the working group process, like, what I would say is that I would want the working groups to have full access to all the comments. And that was the other thing that came in, is that anything, it wasn't just the personal testimony that wasn't included to them, but like on the surveys, they got abbreviated responses that staff just summarized the comments and did not give them the full breadth of comments that the person took the time to write in the survey. And so they asked that when the packet was given to council, or to planning commission, that those comments were all in there because instead of the abbreviated. And so those were the two issues, that there wasn't this consensus and that they wanted planning commission to know that there was not a consensus, or that there was a consensus in the fact that they all agreed that they didn't want to stall the process, but it wasn't a consensus of what the plan was. That makes sense. The plan being proposed.
How do you not stall a project but not agree how to move forward?
Yeah.
I guess is my question.
So I mean, that's the thing is like, again, if it wasn't specifically asked for to be put in the minutes, would it have gotten? And so that's why I think we need to be specific that any dissension should be recorded in the minutes. Maybe it's something simple as that.
How do we proceed with pushing that forward?
We have just had to send a letter, I think, to council, like we always do.
And
The next time a working group, I mean, I don't know when we have the next working group.
if anyone's
So next time council comes and asks us
for this
to-
section.
Okay. Council always sends to us approval of a working group. So we can table it until the next time council comes to us and asks us to approve a working group. And we can say, we approve the working group, but we would like these procedures to be
Okay.
done in that working group.
Okay.
So there's nothing you can do to address the problem.
Well, the guidelines for this working group, I would look at them to actually read them, but my understanding is that it's guideline number 14. Is supposed to require that all public comment would be transferred to the working group to be directly out.
Not summarized?
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a disregard to,
So that could be.
yeah. Okay,
But I like your suggestion about moving forward. So those groups come to us.
make it a moving forward. Okay. Moving on. We will discuss the minutes later. Any other comments in regards to item number 7? Then moving on to planning commission changes. I believe there were some things that were said in the June 18th meeting that caused some consternation, to put it mildly. And I believe there were some things said at the most recent meeting, which was last Thursday, last Wednesday, whatever the date that was, that I got into about 15 to 20 minutes late because when I clicked on whatever I clicked on, it took me to the June 18th and I didn't realize it until 15 to 20 minutes late. So I joined late, so probably might have missed. And the video did not go up until this morning, so I did not get a chance to see that. Would you like to discuss anything, or Shannon wanted to discuss anything? I can discuss from my perspective.
Just give a summary.
There are some state mandated things that are taking certain planning decisions away from the planning commission and turning them into staff decisions. In summary.
So the Senate Bill 1537, and this has apparently been in effect for quite a while, but
1530 this year.
1530.
Is that an older bill?
Not, it's new, because I think that's why we.
Yeah, I thought so.
Why-
We
I
used to
mean,
say
maybe it's an older one that is now.
We're
We'll
just-
use the same number,
Addressing it.
just for different years.
So this is an open 2024 session.
Okay.
So anyway, probably the big issues are applications for subdivisions for class 2 design reviews will become staff decisions. Planning manager to sign off on those. So that was the issue that came up on June 18th, and which pretty much stopped most of the quasi-judicial fairness that we have. We haven't had a lot because we're doing so much legislative stuff in the last 3 or 4 years. Middle housing and stuff like that. And construction has just slowed down. And a lot of the things that are happening are coming through middle housing. Some of those decisions are staff decisions mandated by the legislature. Signature. So anyway, this would have accentuated that even further.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it also made it, I don't want to use the word illegal, but unacceptable for any additional restrictions to be put on this up and down process by having to go over here, which is how the historic review board fits into this.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look.
And that was just my interpretation of what I was hearing.
So what happened last week, so we had public comment, and there's a section in Senate Bill 1537 that allows for the city to file for an exemption. We did not know about that last week.
That was the issue.
Yeah, that there was an opt-out.
Yeah, so if you can justify, the city can justify that, yes, we have this program, and it does all these things. And in fact, it provides another means to comply with 1537. It doesn't restrict housing development. Then you can apply for that exemption. So there were comments, written testimony, and in-person testimony last week related to that. We learned at the beginning of the meeting before all of that discussion was had that there's going to be further discussion. There have been, I guess, new information from DLCD. And so that exemption process is being reviewed by attorneys. So that's kind of where we're at. But other, at least reportedly, it sounds like Lake Oswego, Milwaukee, Salem,
12.
that they have already received exemptions, justified their programs, and so they still make decisions through their planning commission.
The planning commission makes their own decision. It hasn't been strict.
Right. So
Yeah.
the bill hasn't taken this
Okay.
decision.
And I think one of the other qualms is that by having it made as a staff decision, as opposed to a quasi-judicial decision by the planning commission, you do not have public testimony in that decision. And then your appeal is automatically to the city council, which takes the planning commission out of that loop as well, which in theory would limit the amount of it. So basically your only chance to give public comment or become, to have standing, that's sort of what it's for, is at the pre-app.
No.
Is how, well,
You could,
Am I
there
wrong?
would be announcements that was being considered. And you could provide written comment. It would be challenging to provide in-person comment testimony
Correct.
You couldn't do in.
You cannot do person,
You
you
have
have
to
no
do
longer in person. I guess that's what I'm.
But it's,
You
but
can do
there's no
written.
staff decisions now where you can write testimony to staff, so you would have, still have that
Correct.
process.
Correct, that process still is, but as far as an in-person planning commission, whatever, that would be gone.
And so aside from planning commission, 7 people, we have to be down to 1 person. So 7 people on the planning commission are members of the community. And that is not a requirement for planning manager. There's also been discussion of sending appeals to basically an appeals officer, some independent party from the city, rather than go to the city council or even take any planning manager decision through the planning commission. So those kinds of things could happen as well, and that an appeals officer does not have to be from the community. But it's supposed to be objective, likely land use attorney, but again, single person.
So are we gonna file for an exemption?
I sure hope so.
Oh, we don't know.
We don't know, that's, yeah.
Who decides that?
City is currently waiting for our attorneys to weigh in on the most legal precedent direction to go.
So basically we're in a holding pattern.
It's
Precedent? We can't.
Okay.
Check this with the-
So the attorneys have it. I have no other comment.
That's
But-
understandable.
The paid attorneys that the city has are currently reviewing the legality of both positions, and will give council and the city manager a recommendation of what process to go forward.
My concern was less about that because I didn't give testimony when I saw this was going through because I was like, oh, this is state law. We don't really have a choice, so we have to make these co-chances. Problem was that there was this option to opt out was not presented to anybody unless somebody in the community figured it out. And that's how it came to be. So that was just a lack of transparency issue for me that staff should have presented to the planning commission that there is this option, but we're going this way, we're going this way.
All
But that
options
was-
should be presented.
Right, that's my thing. That was my biggest problem is that there was no presentation of this alternative option unless some community member stepped up and found this loophole. So that was my biggest concern.
I would agree that that is a concern.
And I listened to the historic review board meeting too, so their whole, basically, they didn't get their quasi judicial taken away from them. In a sense, they did because there's no decisions that would ever go to them under this new process. So that's, I know you guys have that concern. At your council meeting.
Well, when someone's sitting there saying you took away.
Right.
I don't know who you are. Context when someone's looking at me.
Yeah.
Saying you took away, I'm assuming they mean me or
Yeah.
the council. So,
But that's kind of how that resulted, because I listened to their meeting and they're just, so we really have no purpose. And we're like, yeah, basically. Because they don't have any decision-making ability with the way it was going. Now that's
I don't
being
interpret it that way, but, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's what
I'm not a
basically,
land use attorney.
well,
but
I mean, that's,
They have a
none of-
lot of opportunities, the historic review board has a lot of opportunities to weigh in on matters that,
no quasi-judicial ones.
like, if someone wants to put, you know, some improper use of their historic building in Willamette, they don't get to talk about that. That doesn't have anything to do with the House
That
Bill
doesn't-
1537, so.
The design, yeah, because that design reviewer process is all taken away with this legislation.
That's
And
not
that's
how I
not you-
understand it.
That's
but-
not you doing it. I
Yeah,
know you were
I'll
being
have
for it,
I'll
but
have to look into that, because I don't think that's true, but. I'll
yeah,
have
that's
to-
how, and staff tried to explain that they could come to them with some decisions and get their opinions on stuff. But most likely they wouldn't have any quasi judicial hearings. So, I know that wasn't you taking it. It's state law taking it away.
But that was my understanding as well.
Yeah.
Unless there's this opt-out.
And that was my issue, because back, when I heard it all, I was like, oh, really? You
Exactly.
can't put it in state law.
Exactly.
It's opt-out.
You can, exactly.
Well, if I may, what I interpret, and not that I have the depth of experience of some of the people in this room with planning, is that the dust hasn't settled on any of this, because there's a lot of concern over state mandated rules for planning, and there's questions going to the LCD, there's attorneys looking at these things. So although it's important to keep in mind and have discussions, what I would hope people can still do, though, is keep some perspective and not kind of jump over into accusing people of, well, I hear it happening. I hear it happening in planning commission meetings, and I have yet to see actual intentional deception happening at any level at the city, between the city staff or advisory board. I just haven't seen it. But I'm afraid people kind of creeping into that realm of, assuming bad faith. And I don't think that's happening, but we do have issues we need to be aware of. And we have people who are applying as best they can processes that maybe we don't all agree with. So if we can all kind of keep discussing these things, but also recognize that there's issues at play that still need to be decided, and the dust has not settled, in my personal opinion, on these things. So we have to wait and kind of see how it settles out.
Yeah, like I said, my concern was just that if this community member had not brought to the attention that there was this opt-out, this whole process would have continued going forward.
Well, I'm pretty sure I've heard it discussed at the working group that was doing the code change, the revisions, but there were a lot of meetings.
I don't think there was a working group.
Well, maybe it wasn't called a working group. But I thought that concept, this opt-out, was something that had been discussed, but
Yeah, like planning.
maybe not at a planning commission meeting. No,
It was actually new to us. We were fairly stunned. On this, yeah. And I think maybe it goes back to the legal review that was done as well. That the legal review should have been presented with all of the options. And then staff would also know what those options are. So that could be a way to fill it as well.
it does. It has a section 39. It says it doesn't exempt cities automatically, but it does provide a pathway for them to seek relief from its requirements if they can demonstrate that their local processes already meet the intent of the bill. So we'll see again, back to my saying the dust hasn't settled yet.
Yeah.
So there's legislation, and there might be some kind of relief language, but how that really works its way out eventually, whether someone can say, no, I don't want to do any of that, whether they can be allowed to just walk away from the process remains to be seen. And again, waiting to see how the process moves through the legal channels and results, I think we'll know more.
Well, with no further comment, I will admit to being a complete idiot, and we jump right over number 6.
Oh,
Because, I apparently did not pass kindergarten and did not learn how to count. So we're going to jump from 8 to 6 and do a quick summary of Shannon and I had a lovely visit with City Council on the 14th. And I hope we did not come there wanting to be summer was ticking away and our plans were, not really necessarily going to be met this summer. And they're very receptive of that. I believe that they're going to be addressing that this coming Monday,
Whatever, August 4th, I think.
August
I don't know what
4th.
that is.
And
I think
giving
that's
us,
2 weeks. Because we're only
Okay.
the 22nd.
you are correct. You are correct. And
Summer's
giving
not
us,
almost over that fast.
giving us mission and plans on what we are going to do. I believe it will fit in with a lot of the things that we have proposed to them and goals. With that being said, there is an NAP meeting on Thursday that I am planning on attending because they have them so sporadically and rarely that I want to catch them while I can. And just kind of give them an overview of what we've been talking about and what city council, would like us to help them to do, which is basically, share their mission and send people their way. So it was a nice visit.
And then Danielle, you sent that letter, the work plan to everybody. Did everybody see it and give their comments?
No, the work plan was only for the chair and the
Right.
council.
Which is why I was tiptoeing.
Sorry.
Because I wasn't sure who all I went to, so I wanted to just tiptoe around that, and then I have now that the cat's out of the bag, so to speak. I have seen it, and it does really align with, it's why I mentioned to Chris, how can we help with what you're doing, because it is part of, what they want us to do and help with, because we are a committee for community involvement. I don't even know what we are. And so let's involve the community. With that being said, I also went to the bike kiosk unveiling, opening, ribbon cutting on Saturday, and had a lovely conversation with, I want to say her name is Charity, who's the chair of the Arts and Culture, sorry, I keep thinking Trivial Pursuit. And, they are going to be at the Music at the Park with their, art supplies for the kids and that sort of thing, and said we were welcome to join them. But while there, I broached the whole subject, and she's like, yeah, that's a lot of weeks and a lot of commitments. And so will we bring in the NAs and get them to help us with that? So working with them, they're very open to that and that sort of thing. So, distract the kids with arts and drawing while we recruit the parents to come to an NA that they can sit in their kitchen and do, So, I've begun, as they said, as Bob Marley says, legalize it and I will advertise it. So that's not what I do.
Put that one in the next.
So does anybody have anything you want to? All right.
We'll wait till our August meeting and we should have a work plan.
If we don't get to do it this summer, we can really put the work in to have a really good program in place for, next summer with DNAs fully behind us and the time to actually do that without, frantically running around. So it's a little bit late, but it's not done yet. So it gives us more time to plan. So, all right, we shall move on to staff updates.
That was the big update. Just a reminder that if you have any, comments for the work plan, getting that in by the 24th is ideal so that staff have time to review it and then it can be at the council meeting on August 4th.
I've written lots of lines and arrows.
Okay.
It didn't go to everyone.
Right, it's only supposed to go to the chairs. I know that it's kind of a tight timeline, so it's supposed to.
So we're not commenting.
Not yet, but your chairs, have the discretion to let you know how it goes. Yeah.
And that takes us to the planning of our next meeting, which would be 2, 3, 4, August 26th. Sound good?
Always the same time.
Same time, same bed time, same bed time.
There you go.
It's already on my calendar.
Well, if nobody has anything else, it is 7:11, time for Slurpee, and I will adjourn.